Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
My dear listeners, welcome to this episode number 15 of our radio program Discovering Sacred Christian Art. Today is the episode number 15, but it's the first episode during this Lenten time, and I decided to dedicate this episode to the theme of the Annunciation in Christian art. We are in the second week of the Lenten time. We remember today the death of Saint Benedict from Norcia, Italy, because the death of Saint Benedict occurred on 21st of March, 547, so in the 6th century. But we remember also that we are getting close to the feast of the Annunciation. We will celebrate the Annunciation on Monday, the 25th of March, as ever, and as the tradition wants, exactly 9 months before the birth of our Savior Jesus Christ, in the day of Christmas. The Annunciation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, or also called the Annunciation of the Lord, is the announcement by the angel Gabriel to the Virgin Mary that she will conceive a son by the power of the Holy Spirit to be called Jesus. And I can refer to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, from 26 until 38. The angel Gabriel's pronouncement is met with Mary's willing consent. In fact, she said, "Here I am, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word." And thus precipitated the incarnation of Christ and his redemption of the world. You can see on our website of Bucat Radio, Discovering Sacred Christian Art, uploaded in our web page by Dr. Sebastian Mahfood, some images, and for what concerns this episode 15, you can see the following 8 images that now I am describing. So if you are in front of your computer or if you are using a tablet, a smartphone, you can go on the page of Bucat Radio. Discovering Sacred Christian Art is under the label on Tuesdays, and you can see that our Dr. Sebastian Mahfood created a section specifically dedicated to the images, and for each episode, so from the episode number 1 until the episode number 15 today. The image number 1 is the image of the Annunciation marble relief with inlaid serpentine from Italy. It's dated around the 12th century, and now is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York City, in the Cloisters collection. And it's in the Cloisters collection from 1960. The image number 2, the Virgin of the Annunciation, is in limestone with traces of polychromy. It's French, and it's dated first quarter of the 14th century. And it's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York City, gift of Pierpont Morgan, and it came from 1917. The image number 3 is the famous Annunciation fresco by Fra Angelico, Beato Angelico. It was done between 1438 and 1445 in the Museum of St. Mark in Florence. The image number 4, the Annunciation, is oil on wood panel by Robert Campagne in the Musée Royal des Beaux-Arts in Bruxelles. The image number 5 is the famous Merode altarpiece, also called the Annunciation Triptych. It's oil on wood panel by Robert Campagne. It's dated in the year 1425, and now it is at the Cloisters Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York City. It's in a Cloisters collection from 1956. The image number 6 is a detail of the famous Annunciation. It's a temper on wood by the famous Italian painters Simone Martini and Lippo Memmi. It's dated 1333, and it's in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. The image number 7 is the famous Annunciation by Jan van Eyck. It's dated in the year 1434, and if you are in the United States of America, you can visit it because it's in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. The image number 8, the last image uploaded, it's the famous Annunciation by Murillo. It's dated in the second half of the 17th century, so 1660 and 1665. It's oil on canvas. The location is the Museum del Prado in Madrid, Spain. And the dimensions are 142 centimeters per 107.5 centimeters. Well, my dear listeners, I want to spend some words explaining the reason of the theme of the Annunciation in the history of Christian art. As maybe you remember that in my previous explanations, I recalled that the first authentic allusions to the feast of the Annunciation, apart from the Gelasian and Gregorian sacramentaries, in both of which it is mentioned, but the first authentic allusions to the feast of Annunciation are in the acts of the Council of Toledo that took place in 656 and of the Trulan Council that took place in 692. Because its significance is much more than narrative, the Annunciation had a particularly important place in the arts and church decoration of the early Christian medieval periods and in devotional art of the Renaissance and Baroque periods. The Annunciation has been one of the most frequent subjects of the Christian art. As you know, depictions of the Annunciation go back to the early Christianity, with the Priscilla catacomb in Rome, as I recalled in the first episodes of this program, including the oldest known fresco of the Annunciation, dating to the 4th century of the Roman history, as we recalled, I think, in the episode number 1. Since depicting the Annunciation represents the perpetual virginity of Mary, in the context of the announcement by the angel Gabriel that Mary would conceive a child to be born the Son of God. The scene is an invariable one in cycles of the life of the Virgin, and often included as the initial scene in those of the life of Christ. Frescoes depicting this scene have appeared in Roman Catholic Marian churches for centuries, and it has been a topic addressed by many artists in multiple media, ranging from stained glass to mosaic to relief, of course to sculpture to oil painting. Let me spend some words for what concerns the Annunciation in the Middle Ages and in the Renaissance period. Particularly popular during the Middle Ages and also during the Renaissance, the meaning of the Annunciation appears in the work of almost all the great masters. Figures of the Virgin Mary and the Archangel Gabriel were favorite subjects of Roman Catholic Marian art. Works on the subject have been created. For example, let me cite for you important name of the Italian tradition of painting, Sandro Botticelli, Leonardo da Vinci, Caravaggio, Duccio di Buoninsegna, and in North Europe, Jan van Eyck, in Spain, Murillo, and thousands of other artists. The mosaics, for example, of Pietro Cavallini in the famous church of Santa Maria in Trastevere in Rome, dated 1291, the frescoes of Giotto in the Scrovegni Chapel in Padua, dated 1303, and the fresco of the famous Domenico Ghirlandaio at the Church of Santa Maria Novella in Florence, dated 1486, and concluding with the famous Donatello's gilded sculpture and the Church of Santa Croce in Florence of 1435. These are some of the most famous examples. The composition of depictions is very consistent with Archangel Gabriel normally standing on the left, facing the Virgin, who is generally seated or kneeling, at least in later depictions. Typically, the Archangel Gabriel is shown in a near profile, with the Virgin faces more to the front. She is usually shown indoors or in a porch of some kind, in which case Gabriel may be outside the building entirely. And you can notice that in the Renaissance, often in a garden, which refers to the famous concept of the hortus conclusus. Sometimes an explicit setting for the Annunciations. This is a context recalled in many depictions. The building is sometimes clearly the Virgin's home, but is also often intended symbolically to represent the Jerusalem temple, as some legendary accounts place the scene there. The Virgin may be shown reading, because in medieval legends represented her as a considerable scholar, or engaged in a domestic task, often reflecting another legend that she was one of the number of virgins asked to weave a new veil of the temple. Late medieval commentators distinguish several phases of the Virgin's reaction to the appearance of Gabriel and the news, from initial alarm of the Virgin at the sudden vision, followed by reluctance to fulfill the role, to a final acceptance. These are reflected in art by the Virgin's posture, expressions, in particular facial expressions. In late medieval and early Renaissance, the impregnation of the Virgin by God may be indicated by rays falling on her, typically through a window, as light passing through a window was a frequent metaphor in devotional writing for her virginal conception of Jesus. Sometimes a small figure of God the Father or the Holy Spirit, as the dove is seen in the air as the source of the rays. Less common examples feature other biblical figures in the scene. Gabriel, especially in Northern Europe, is often shown wearing the vestments of a diacon and on a grand feast day, with a cup fastened at the center with a larmos, a brooch. Especially in early Netherlandish painting, images may contain very complex programs of visual references, with a number of domestic objects having significance in reinforcing the theology of the event. Well-known examples are the Merode altarpiece of Robert Campaign that you can see uploaded in our section devoted to images, the Annunciation by Jan van Eyck that is in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. And let me conclude with a short reflection on the Annunciation on the Byzantine Rite. The Byzantine Rite icons display, as is usual, even more consistent compositions than medieval Western images. The Virgin is nearly always on the right, normally either standing or seated on a throne with a building behind her. There are also often buildings visible behind Archangel Gabriel. These styles were generally copied in the West until a surprisingly late date, around the 13th century. More varied Western depictions were slower to develop than with other standard religious subjects. Because of the natural composition of the scene as two figures facing each other, the subject was often employed in the decoration of a diptych or tympanium, decorated arch above a doorway. In churches of the Byzantine Rite, the Annunciation is typically depicted on the holy doors, the decorative doorway leading from the nave into the sanctuary. And in the West, the two figures are also found on different surfaces in the outer panels of polyptychs that have an open and closed view, the doors of tabernacles, or simply on facing pages in illuminated manuscripts or different compartments of large altarpieces. Well, my dear listeners, I hope that this episode number 15 was of help for you to deepen your researches in the field of sacred Christian art, and I hope that you enjoyed the focus of today on the theme of the Annunciation, because remember that we have two ways to look into the history of art, that is the history of the sacred art. The first is the history itself. The second is the various the typology of a theme, the Annunciation, the birth of Christ, and many other themes that we discovered during the time and thanks to our episodes. I wish you to spend an intense second week of this Lenten time, and I'm looking forward to speaking for you during the episode number 16. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.